Welcome in to another edition of Trust the Process Recorded. We're going to be live soon enough. Trust me. There's good things coming out about all these vaccines being rushed to testing. But for right now, we're coming at you from our bedrooms or home offices, as we like to call them, for business reasons. But don't let that fool you. We're in our bedrooms. I'm James Hyden, your host. We got our guys Max Coolish and James Jackson here, as always. Fellas, how we doing?
Say it, James.
Yeah, surviving, man. That's all we can do. That's all we're gonna do. I'm reporting live from my new apartment in University City, so I officially joined you boys in the city of brotherly love. It's great to be here. It's an awesome place. So,
Love it.
Yes, I moved during the pandemic. Sorry to all my fans. I did it very safely though, clean, with masks and gloves, and professionally clean before I got here. So.
Attaboy. I got to say it, guys. I'm really happy this whole surviving thing's catching on because I get a chuckle out of a lot of people whenever I say it. Like, it's pretty much like 9 out of 10 whenever, hey, how you doing? I'm surviving. Guaranteed 9 out of 10. Like, that's all we can do. I love it, personally.
It's relatable. So relatable. It's all we can do.
No, exactly. Surviving, getting by, you know what I mean? Whatever you throw out there. But we're going to get back to sports. So this week has been it's been noteworthy because the NFL is continuing to push forward as if everything's going to go on without a hitch. The season's going to start as originally anticipated, and they even released all of the schedules, which was kind of a big thing earlier last week. I'm sorry. So we're going to start out with kind of your first impressions of the Eagles schedule. It looks a little bit tough, but there are some games that should be winners. What are you guys' first impressions? Max, we'll start with you.
Honestly, so I'm not sure, if everybody, because this is something I feel like not a lot of people know is kind of how the NFL schedule works. So essentially the NFL schedule works depending on where you placed in your division last year, right? So the Eagles winning their division last year are playing a first place schedule. That means they're playing the same schedule in terms of construction that teams like the Ravens or the Chiefs are going to play, right? They're going to play other division winners plus the standard divisions that other teams in their division will all play throughout the course of the season, right? So with that in mind, knowing that the Eagles are supposed to play a tougher schedule than the average team, I'm pretty content with how things look, right? Like, Seattle in Philadelphia week 12, not loving that. Playing the Saints, always a tough matchup against them. They're going to be in a dogfight with the Bucks, all season probably for that division title. So they're probably not going to be – that's a little too early to be talking about, rest and all that stuff anyway. But you have the Packers on there. You have the Ravens. You have the Steelers, even though the Steelers weren't a division winner. They're part of the teams we're playing regardless. So we definitely have our fair amount of challenges. There's going to be games where the Eagles are going to look really good against good competition. They're going to look really bad against good competition. Every team does it except the truly elite ones. I don't think this iteration of the Eagles is going to be there in the early stages when they're playing good teams. Maybe later on in the year. We have a nice tough stretch of Seattle week 12, Packers week 13, Saints week 14. That will probably be the defining stretch of the season in terms of, hey, how do you stack up against the teams that are supposed to be the best? How do you stack up against the hierarchy or the perceived hierarchy right now of the NFC? So in addition to all the usual division theatrics you have, games against Dallas are always, heart stoppers and you're sitting on the edge of your seat. We open against the Redskins for what feels like the 15th straight year. Like every year I've been alive, the Redskins are week 1. But I'll say this, the NFL got it right. They didn't completely ruin the timing of playing your divisional games like they did last year and the year before. So props to them where it's due. But all in all, I realistically think the Eagles can probably sniff 10 wins again. Whether or not that's enough for the division is a different story because the Cowboys also play a lot of the same teams of us, but they play an easier version of that schedule. So I'm not sure if 10 wins will be enough, especially if you can't get a tiebreaker with the Cowboys. So that's a different conversation. But I certainly think that schedule is balanced enough between challenges and games that you should definitely expect to win, that the Eagles should at least be challenging for playoffs. And it would take something pretty crazy for them to not be in a driver's seat position coming the end of the season, in my eyes.
Driver's seat, huh? James, what do you think?
Some way. Wild card or division.
I mean, look, as long as the Cowboys are in disarray, I think the Eagles do have, a good shot of being in the driver's seat for the NFC East. If and when the Cowboys put it together, then, you're going to have some resistance there. But that's –
If and when.
If and when. It was a whole different story. But my initial reaction to the Eagles' schedule is two things. One, Max, you kind of hit on it, where your division games are. Last year for the Eagles, a lot of them were at the end of the season, which isn't always a bad thing. I actually, personally, when it happens for the Bucs, I like it it puts your fate in your hands at the end of the season. If you need to, rattle off 3 or 4 straight wins at the end of the season to make the playoffs, which that may sound familiar to Eagles fans right there.
Yeah.
Then you play
hey, it worked out for us last year for sure.
Exactly. And then, that's a good thing that helps you. You're not relying on other teams to, beat your division to win. It's all in your hands. So, your division games are more spread out in terms of that. And then the good teams you play. I mean, Max, you talked about how you guys were a division winner last year. You're going to play that type of schedule. But it's still a tough schedule. And there's some sneaky road games that the Eagles have that I don't think should get lost in the fold just because you have the 49ers, Ravens, and Saints on your schedule. You go to Cleveland where, if they put it together, Cleveland is going to be, a tough place to play. It's going to be a good football team, and playing any road game in the NFL is tough.
How many times have we said that, though?
We get a new chance at it now. You get a new head coach, and, hopefully tensions have settled down. You got the guy that nobody wanted in, and now you get the guy that everyone likes in. So hopefully, it already happened with Hugh Jackson, but hopefully, the second time is good. But I just don't think you can write off the Cleveland Browns for what they have, especially as a road game. The Arizona Cardinals are a new team with a whole lot of promise. You go to Arizona at the end of the season that when maybe kinks have been worked out of the offense. So there's some sneaky road games that the Eagles have. Going to Pittsburgh is not an easy thing to do ever.
Oh.
Going to Lambeau late in the season this year instead of week 3 or week 4 is never an easy obstacle. So there's some road games that are going to really be a test for the Eagles. The road schedule is very hard.
It's going to be interesting because they're pushing the schedule out and we're acting like the NFL season is just going to happen. You know what I mean? It's going to happen the same way it's always been, but there's going to be no fans there most likely. So now we venture into a weird conversation about like pumping crowd noise into the stadium and like DJs being there for home fields and
laugh tracks like sitcoms.
Yeah, like can you imagine like being the opposing team and having like the Titanic soundtrack like while you're going on offense? Like what does that do to
I think that should happen with or without fans.
That'd be awesome.
I think that's hilarious.
That's just good for the stadium.
You know what I mean? Like Dak drops back at the link, like fourth quarter, 3 minutes left, and all you can think of is like Rose just letting Jack go on that door. Like it's
tragic.
It's kind of different, you know what I mean? So I kind of want to see how that turns out. And we know a couple DJs that we could recommend to Howie Roseman and the link if they're looking for anybody. I think that'd be hilarious. So we're going to move on. Staying with that whole theme of the different atmosphere, because football to me is probably the one where the fans have the most effect on the atmosphere in the game.
Yeah.
So we got a little bit of a taste earlier this week with UFC 249, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think it was UFC 249. I don't know if either of you guys watched it. It was really different. Like it was fun. Don't get me wrong, I like watching UFC, but it was really different. Like there was no cheering for the guy there, for the fighters entering the ring. There was no cheering for the champions. And I'm talking about you don't just see the hits. Every kick to these thighs, like it exploded. Like I've never heard anybody get hit that hard. So what do you guys think? How does that translate across all of we'll stick with the big 4 sports. How does this, what kind of template does UFC provide for going forward with no fans? James?
Well, for the 4 major sports, which is what, dominates the U.S., you talk about like the intimacy of sports. That happens, through fans. And that's where you feel the emotion and the energy from. And you talked about how weird it was when, a guy's supposed to be getting pumped up and going to the ring and hearing his music blasting. And I'm sure if we can feel as spectators watching that there's something missing, I'm sure the performers and the athletes feel like there's a huge part of this that's missing. This is what I feed off of is not there. That's the energy I feed off of, whether it's good or bad. I mean, one of Derek Jeter's most famous quotes is saying like, "Boos motivate me more than cheers do." Like I love the noise or the sound of boos coming from opposing fans. So there's something missing from that, and especially sports like basketball where it's such an intimate crowd feel. Like you feel like you're a part of the game, and you feel like your crowd is there with you. I mean that's gonna definitely change a lot, and I think it's gonna feel really weird. I know the 4 major sports are businesses, and that's why they want to get back up and running. Like they need to continue running their business and continue, their empires and revenues and coming in. So I understand it. And the UFC is kind of setting that precedent, looking like the first domino to fall. A lot of businesses are looking and seeing how Dana White is pushing the UFC forward, regardless of their athletes tested positive for coronavirus. One of their fighters tested positive, and Dana White didn't blink, said we are still going as normal. So I think sports are seeing that kind of trend and moving forward, and we're going to have to kind of just push through this virus. But, there's going to be something missing, a huge part of it missing. And I get it. We have to move forward, but I don't like it. And I wish something could be done, because I don't know how I'm going to feel when watching a major sporting event and you don't hear that crowd cheer. Mike Breen's bang is gonna sound like a sonic boom because it's not nothing is absorbing it.
Right, and Dana wasn't even wearing a mask out there, which was a little.
Yeah.
You might get a little bit of flack on that.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that, but
a little suspect.
Max, what do you think?
So I think UFC is an interesting example because it's so different than the way the 4 traditional sports operate. I'm not sure, I know we kind of talked about this really briefly before we started recording, but the German Bundesliga, which is their top division of soccer, and the German Bundesliga 2, which is their second division of soccer in Germany, are slated for return on this Saturday, May 16th. Back to how it was before, right before everything got canceled officially, there was that period where all, basically all soccer clubs in Europe were playing with empty stands, no fans from either team, only essential personnel, handful of media, team personnel, players, doctors, coaches, that's it. You know what I mean? The bare essentials, right? So I think that's maybe a little bit better of an example. I think, they've come out and said that if someone is to come out and test positive, that player is going to be quarantined. They're not going to let it, jeopardize the effect of everyone, unless it becomes necessary. They've had everyone in quarantine for weeks before they go back to the team and all that stuff. They say they're going to have test kits available, yada, 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 right? But I think the point here is that looking at organized team sports is a lot different than having one UFC weekend and, having everyone come here for 2 days, be like, we're all in and we're all out of this one place, as opposed to all the moving parts that come with a league like the NBA or the NHL or Bundesliga or whatever, right? So I think that things will hopefully ultimately prove to be all right. Like, I think, a study actually came out by, I think, a lab in, I want to say maybe Spain, that it shows that they did it in relation to soccer players, but they said the possibility of soccer players getting it is, significantly lower than you would think with all, how close they are together. Like they said, it's very unlikely just from the physical interaction of the game. It's not impossible, but it's much less likely than it was originally perceived to be. And that's why they're kind of confident about the chances of this not, blowing into another, full-blown wave where every single member of every single club is infected, or half of them are, you know what I mean? So I think that'll really be our best test to see what the realistic chances of any sport in America resuming. I think it goes without saying the NBA will probably be the first to roll the dice when things start to get to that point. But I know Adam Silver is a big soccer guy in general. I know he'll be all over that Bundesliga situation, seeing what's going on there.
It's interesting because I don't know if anybody else saw this. It was actually like a small town in Italy. Their soccer match was kind of where they traced literally the whole country of Italy's like the major boom was, because there was a soccer match slated that they didn't want to cancel, and all the fans showed up, and that is pretty much what got the entire country of Italy sick. It's a really interesting thing. Kind of you weigh the moral and ethical decision of will they be back, but it's no longer a question of will they be back. It's what kind of template they choose to follow. So it's good to see that Dana White's being one of those guys that is going to kind of be the champion of getting all the major sports back. So Dana kind of laid something out that Rob Manfred is trying to do with the MLB being the next major domino to fall in terms of presenting a plan to their Players Association. So this is going to be really crazy for me to see, just because one of the first things that they're talking about doing is redoing the divisions, which I don't know how I feel about, guys, in all honesty. And then another major domino to fall is the universal DH coming to the NL too. Two of the big controversies in baseball for a long time. So the East, who's in the East? Max, did you get that? I have it right here. So The East, Philly's new division would be Baltimore, Boston, Pittsburgh, Miami, New York, both New York teams, Tampa Bay, Toronto, and the Washington D.C. Nationals. What do we think, guys? Max, I'm gonna start with you. What do we think about this new Eastern Division?
Well, my initial reaction has to be, God damn, I'm in the same division as the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yeah, exactly.
That's got to be the initial one, right? Like, as much as I hate to say it, a big part of the reason, not a big part, but certainly a contributing factor why the Phillies always have higher expectations and we can, reasonably expect to compete on a higher level on a consistent basis, especially compared to the rest of our division, is the payroll, right? Like, that is a huge advantage for the Phillies. They're fourth in, I believe, the whole league after the two aforementioned teams in the Los Angeles Dodgers. I think they're right above the Angels last time I just checked. But the Mets are a couple spots beneath them, and the Braves, the Nationals, and the Marlins are all in the bottom third of the league in terms of payroll, I believe. Maybe the Braves have jumped up a little bit more by now. But that does provide them an advantage. They have the chance to go after these higher caliber free agents, which is supposed to pull you through in tight games. And let's be honest, the NL East has not been the best division in baseball, is pretty much, or even one of the better divisions in baseball, maybe in my whole life, is really kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I can't really ever remember a period of time where the whole division was dominating. The NL East has had a lot of dominant teams. The Braves, the Phillies had a great run. The Nationals last year, even though they weren't really dominant. But there wasn't really a time where it's like, damn, the Phillies and the Braves are the best two teams in the NL, and they're in the same division, and whoever wins the home field is going to win the playoff series. That's going to happen. I don't really ever remember that happening in my lifetime, right? The Phillies and Mets have had their clashes, us and the Braves, the Mets and the Braves, but I don't really remember there being domination between two teams in this division.
Nah, it's always been one of those like middle of the road divisions that's like talked about
exactly.
As
top
like
heavy. It's top heavy every single year.
Right. It's gonna be a dogfight inside the division, but nobody's really worried about you outside of it, which is interesting. James, what's your take on that?
I mean, at first, Max, yes, you're exactly right. That's the very first thing you say when you look at this is, damn, the Yankees and the Red Sox, like, we have to get not only two of those historic franchises, but do we get roped up in the middle of this rivalry too? And then that's when I kind of liked it. I was like, look, that would maybe be cool to get roped up in a little bit of a rivalry with that. I mean, we've had the clashes with the Mets and the Braves and the Marlins and Nationals, as you just alluded to, Max, but we only get a little bit of snippet of the Yankees in spring training and then maybe a series or two, and then two series, a home series and an away series with the Red Sox this year, and then you don't see them until the World Series if both teams get there. Sure, that'd be kind of cool to kind of, go back to, kind of the roots of baseball, the really old historic franchises, three of the oldest being the Phillies, Yankees, and Red Sox, all kind of, getting back to the tradition of baseball, getting to the roots of baseball and, playing those teams together. That'd be kind of cool. It's going to be a weird season. It's going to be a weird restart, a weird resume whenever sports or baseball comes back. And maybe having a little bit of change like this in baseball, but having still the same game, still the same amount of games, but just having different teams, a little bit of shake up like that. Like, maybe that'd be cool to see. I'm not opposed to that. So
I think Bryce Harper would hit a lot of home runs in Yankee Stadium.
A lot.
Oh God, yeah.
That's a huge plus. I love the interstate rivalry of seeing the Pirates. That's something I think that
would be awesome. I wish we played the Pirates more often.
I think that's something
in the same state. They should not be in different divisions. That should always be a thing.
I think that's huge.
I agree with this. I think it should be the same with the Steelers too.
I definitely agree with you. And then I forgot my third point, but one tag along question to that is the universal DH. Like, is it time? Like, do we even like that?
Really quick.
Those talks have been those talks started before quarantine and before all this happened. Like, those started so long ago. So I've always been a proponent of the universal DH. It's one of those things when you start playing baseball and getting to baseball, like, you just don't understand why the DH.
Exactly. Yes. 100%.
Like, it's like, why is this? Why is this here? And James, you kind of said something before we started recording. You said, because that's the way it's always been. And that's kind of been the answer, so you kind of accept it. But it's one of those things that doesn't have a clear answer. So it's like, why not give the DH to everyone? No one wants to see the pitchers hit. Like, no.
Yeah, wouldn't that be better for baseball?
In baseball, exactly.
It would be better for just consistent.
It would be, especially the Phillies. You could bring up play Reese at the DH. I get it. It would be better for the Phillies, but I want to see.
I just think it should be consistent in general. And I think from someone who's like pretty casual baseball fan, like, I would rather see someone else who consistently has a chance to drive in 40 homers a year compared to a pitcher who is basically an automatic out every time. Yes, I get that there is a huge part of the strategy that goes into the National League side with managing your hitting order and your pitchers and when you sub them, when you take the chance, all that stuff. But I just think it should be consistent. It's so weird that, on paper, one team has an extra guy who can mash a home run and not play defense, and the other guy has someone who's a potential sack bunter at best. You know what I mean? I just think there needs to be some consistency.
You're telling me that you would get rid of Arm & Hammer's Arms That Hammer? Come on. That's one of the better.
I just want it to be consistent. It's so weird. It's so unusual about that
promotions ever created, man.
Another wrinkle to it is, there's a whole lot of excitement when a pitcher does get a hit. One of the most memorable times in baseball history is Bartolo Colon getting a hit on his 40th birthday. Like that's
Joe Blanton going deep.
Joe Blanton, yeah, you're bringing up the wrong baseball memory, bud.
Joe Blanton.
That's the only baseball highlight that I still watch on a regular basis.
Joe Blanton.
The Joe Blanton one.
Oh my God, dude!
Blanton sends one deep into the night.
Yeah, I think that was that the Matt Stairs call.
Oh, that's Matt Stairs. Yeah. What's
Stairs.
the Blanton? Oh, damn it! I made an idiot of myself.
Dude, no, hey, Joe Blanton sending one right to dead center. That's all time right there.
I got him confused. That's the other one I watch because the Matt Stairs one always shows up. They always show up as recommended to each other, whichever one you look up. You watch the other one right after. So
right, YouTube's fault.
All right, no, come on now. You're never gonna get faulted for bringing up that iconic Matt Stairs call. Good. Stairs sends one deep into the night. Oh man!
Wait, that was Joe Buck. I'm like, wait, Joe Buck wouldn't have called the championship series.
Right.
So it started to click for me right as I said it, but I just kind of get.
No, you'll never get faulted for bringing up that call.
Thank you. That's a consolation prize.
Wait, did you have something that you wanted to? I know you had your hand up.
I was just gonna say that I don't think I mentioned this before. I'm all for these realigned divisions. I just love chaos, and personally, I know you're a baseball purist, but I kind of want to see the baseball purists squirm a little bit. How dare they realign my division? I don't know what it is, but baseball is the only sport that has the I don't want to say snarky, but the deep-rooted purism that no other sport has. And I kind of want to see mix up in general. I'm always cool for something chaotic to happen, but I just think it'd be an added layer of some funny, lighthearted, good times to see it happen to baseball and just see all the meltdown that would happen on Twitter. Honestly.
Oh, it's definitely snark. It's definitely snark.
It's snark. I didn't want to say it, but you're the purist here, and you said it. So yes, a lot of baseball purists are snarky.
It's definitely snark. So we're talking about the MLB possibly hitting the reset button on some of these things that the answer's always been, like James said earlier, because that's the way it's always been. So is that kind of begs the question to me, are there any things that the other sports can take from that? You know what I mean? There's always these questions about the scheduling. Some of the divisions just don't make sense. Is there anything that you guys would just prefer that sports just kind of hit the reset button, take the hard reset, and don't always have to answer because that's the way it's always been? James?
When you're talking about because that's the way it's always been, that's because of tradition. And I think a huge part of sports is tradition. I'm going to err on the side of tradition here and say, yes, maybe some of it doesn't make sense where, why are the Cowboys in the NFC East and, some of the things like that, but does it really have to? Do we have to, change it and make sense? We're so deep into this by now that if you change it, I think you're leaving behind a whole segment of history. You're kind of, closing the book on all of that and starting this new story. Yeah. So you're going to lose a lot of that, going forward, I believe. So, I think hitting the reset button is unnecessary. So from the standpoint of maybe calendar resets and telling maybe the four major sports, instead of worrying about trying to continue, your season where you've gone so far, just don't worry about it. Whenever your next season comes up, we're going to start it from then. That is more realistic. I still wouldn't agree, but that's more of what I could see happening instead of, just hitting the reset button altogether and kind of rearranging stuff.
Fair. Max, what'd you take?
So I agree with James that I don't think they need to hit the reset button, but I think what you said is a great point because I wasn't even thinking along those lines. I was thinking more along the lines of tradition in the sense of how we associate sports with what else is happening at that time of the year. For example, spring in baseball, spring's in the air, baseball's in the air, or, various nights on football season, like Thanksgiving Day games on football season, or like seeing like a Halloween weekend game where every fan in every stadium has their costumes on, or Christmas, right, where everyone's Santa, or I'm trying to think here, like the Cowboys always falling apart in December, right? Just things that happen traditionally every single year without fail, right? You're always, these things are going to happen at that time. Christmas Day in the NBA, right? Like it's at the Christmas Day is when things start to get serious in the NBA, right? And so I think that's really the main thing that I would like to see kept intact. I think for most leagues, if it has to be a non-traditional way, I think they'll try to figure out a way to do that where it's this one year that's messed up and they can get back to the status quo, moving forward, after all the COVID stuff passes.
It's interesting. It is, because we're not only we're not sure about the NBA right now, but we're kind of subbing the Christmas Day NBA games for NFL games this year. Like, we're going to be able to watch the NFL on Christmas Day, which is something that we haven't really been able to say before, which is going to be kind of odd to me, but I kind of like it.
It
you know what I
happens
mean?
now and then.
Yeah, it happened a couple years ago.
Yeah, they're not shy to doing it. It's just like whenever it happens, but it's never more than a couple games, because once the one thing I hate about the NFL schedule, not to go off tangent here, but towards the end of the season when it just breaks down and it's like, here's Thursday games, Saturday games, Sunday games, and the Monday night game. Like, the NFL needs to tighten it up there, and that's when all the Christmas Day and Christmas Eve stuff happens, like semi-regularly.
Yeah, I rolled over on a Sunday morning, like 9 a.m., and I had an alert that the NFL games were starting in an hour. I was like, wait a minute.
Why do I need Dolphins Bills at 9 a.m.? You know what I mean? Like, what? Just come on, dude. 1, 4 to 5, 4:30, 8:30.
That to me is kind of why I would say maybe move basketball or hockey just a little bit, either forward or back, to kind of, I know NBA competes with the NFL in ratings wise a little bit, which doesn't really help the NBA. They don't like it. They've spoken out about that a couple of times, but
no one's gonna win.
That's really the only thing that I would nitpick and choose. You know what I mean?
I mean, I guess really, sorry not to cut you off, but like realistically, how much wiggling can you do? Like, we play sports seasonally because there's a reason that, like, can't play football other than when it gets cold out in the whole country, because you can't have home games in Texas in April and May. Dude, people will literally die if you play full NFL games on Sundays.
Dome everywhere, Max. Domes.
Domes everywhere. Okay. Well, besides the world where every team's able to put together a weather-neutral controlled dome, a lot of the sports, they just don't have wiggle room. Yes, hockey and basketball are kind of different, but I think a lot of those players, especially NBA players, they like having their summer. They like having summer vacation like they've had all their lives growing up as a kid until they're 19, being the first pick in the draft.
So might even when it feels like the NBA doesn't really have a long off season at all. Like, hockey and NBA kind of feels like they're gone and then they're back.
Yeah, in a way, but that's because the end of the season starts. But like, think about it for every other team besides those two teams playing in the finals, right? For 2/3 of the league, your season's over 2 months before the league season's over.
Right.
So that's just devil's advocate.
Well, hey, I mean, we're going to have a lot of discussion about this coming up, because there's sure to be more hats to drop on this subject, with the MLB presenting, like I said, they're presenting their plan to their Players Association tomorrow, being Tuesday. And then what the NBA and NHL still have yet to get anything concrete, but we'll see what they shake out. So we're going to move into halftime, which, as always, during this quarantine, has been our social media distancing questions. And guys, sounds like JJ won last week. So Max, what's we decided on a punishment beforehand. Yeah, let's give a little claps to JJ, our winner this week. What's that score now?
Huh?
2-1 Coolish. 2-1 Coolish. He's still up, but
2-1, yeah.
I made it in series. Coming
back. Max, we decided on a quote-unquote punishment before the show. You want to tell everybody what they're going to be watching you do?
I am going to punish myself, quote-unquote, by shaving all of this off finally. I will no longer be – you know what? This is my punishment. Doing this in front of everybody so you can see how long my hair is. This is what you get for winning. All this goes away. I look ridiculous. I look ridiculous.
That's glorious right there, man.
Quarantine cut from Coolish.
I look like every loopy scientist character from every show in the 90s.
You're not wrong.
Oh, man.
So, all this is gone.
All right, so you guys, you got to tune in. Social media is going to be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere.
I'll put it up on IG and Twitter, maybe even Facebook.
Oh, we're going to get that. We're going to
It'll be a nice shave. It'll be one of those. Maybe I'll even do it in slow motion. That first one, where I'll do the first one right down the middle.
Nice.
Everyone get a nice look at how stupid I look like that, and I think we can call it fair from there.
Beautiful. That's going to bring us to our question of this week, and you guys need to vote on that either on the polls via Twitter or Instagram pages, or you can leave a comment down below on Facebook, or if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to tally those up. And after you see Max get his head shaved, we're going to find out a new winner next week, and who knows, maybe JJ shaves his head too.
Yeah,
but,
not a chance. Yeah, not a chance that's happening.
Oh, all right. Maybe some
something else.
But that's going to take us to this week's question. And this one's a doozy. Who would win in a game, the 1996 Bulls or the 2016 Warriors? So now that these are the two best teams of all time win-loss record-wise. The 73-9 Warriors versus the 72-10 Bulls. James, who you got?
And it's in a single game. I'm taking the Warriors. If you're talking series, then I don't think there's a chance that the Warriors can beat the Bulls 4 times before the Bulls beat the Warriors 1 time. But if I need one game and, the outside shooting that the 2016 Warriors presented, Steph Curry breaking his record again for most three-pointers made in a season, him and Klay Thompson both shooting above 45% from three that season. I don't think the Bulls were ever prepared to handle that kind of three-point shooting team, a team who plays outside in instead of inside out. All the teams in the 90s were built inside out, and the Bulls were matched up for that and prepared for that. They were not matched up and prepared for sometimes 5 perimeter players on the floor at one time and having to play such an up and down fast paced game and such a high scoring game. I don't think they would be prepared for that. And so, Steph Curry would be a little bit of a matchup problem on defense, but him on offense combined with Klay Thompson and the way they move the ball, the way the Warriors move the ball on offense, I think would be deadly. I tell you what, when they go to that Hamptons lineup, when Iguodala goes to the 5, and you have Draymond, or Iguodala goes to the 4 and Draymond Green goes to the 5, that matchup would present a lot of problems for the Bulls. I truly believe that. Whoever would be on Draymond at the 5 would not be able to handle him in the open floor. He would become the facilitator from the center position. No team in the 90s that ever seen that was prepared for that. And then to have to guard, 15 shot attempts apiece from Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, and 11 of them going in at one time, that's a barrage, and they're not ready to handle it.
All right, Max, counter argument. Give us your rebuttal.
I mean, it's pretty simple in my mind. This one game is an NBA Finals game, and last time I checked, the Warriors didn't do too good in them that year. Michael Jordan did a hell of a job in 95, 96 in NBA Finals games. So that's how I wanted to interpret the question. But honestly, I think if Finals game, conference finals, semifinals, first round, regular season, I think if I'm taking one game, I think it's close because of the play styles are so different. But I do think that Bulls team can clamp them down defensively. I think Rodman would just absolutely eat up Draymond. Like that's not even a slight against Draymond. I think he's incredibly underrated by the general population of NBA fans. But I don't think there would be a worse player for him to match up against than Dennis Rodman having to play the 5. Yeah, the Bulls team were a little bit bigger, and Rodman wasn't a 5 for them. But I think the way that they would match up with them, Rodman would likely be the biggest player on the field or on the court, So I think ultimately the Bulls would find a way. And let's be honest here, the Michael Jordan factor is gonna factor in here because he knows there's one game being played. He knows that this game is for all the marbles, and that's gonna take him over the edge.
That's a very good point. And the 95-96 Bulls team was the most team-oriented Bulls team, at least up until that point, for them playing. But I still don't think that, the ball movement and the ball sharing, how fast the ball moved in the Warriors' offense in their prime, which was, 2015, 2016, it's just that style of play wasn't mimicked too much in the 90s. The Bulls weren't dealing with that. It was a much slower pace of play. And,
sure.
They just the open floor pace that the Warriors had is what I think would be a huge problem for everyone involved.
I think the pace would meet somewhere in the middle, personally. I don't think it would be as wide open as the 120 to 115, Warriors Clippers games that we were seeing that year, but it certainly wouldn't be 93 to 90 like it was in the Bulls playoff.
That's the Bulls in one of the games in the documentary. I can't remember which one. I believe it was against the Knicks. They go to double OT, and the final score is 120 to 113. I'm double OT. We're hitting 120 with 4 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter sometimes.
Right.
There was an overtime game against the Hornets.
And that's normal.
Yep.
Like a score in today's NBA against you doesn't mean as much as you scoring against somebody else. Back then, a score against somebody like hurts you. You're like, damn, they scored today. It's like, get the ball out of the basket and go score. Like that's the mentality. The Warriors are ready for Michael Jordan to hit them with buckets because they'll trade 2 for 3s all day long. Like it's just such a different style and a different, preparedness. If I need one all-out carefree shooting game just to beat them, then that's what's going to happen. The Warriors were made to outscore teams, not stop them.
You make good points, man. Draymond Green is my sticking point, which is why I got to go with I got to lean towards Max, and it's a little bit weird because it's not Draymond Green style of play. It's that he's usually used to being the crazy one on the floor and being looked at like that. Dennis Rodman versus Draymond Green would be pay-per-view TV.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Everybody in the world knows that Draymond Green would have talked some shit before the series about Michael Jordan, and that wouldn't have gone well. Like, that's immediately Jordan's going, oh, I'm going to destroy this dude.
Well, I think the funniest part about it is Steve Kerr, the coach, would have a hell of a scouting report on Steve Kerr, the point guard.
Yeah, right. That's really funny. So that's our social media question. So Max chose the 96 Bulls. James chose the 2016 Warriors. So you got to tell us who's right. So like I said earlier, you're going to vote by either the polls on Twitter or Instagram pages, or you can leave a comment down below on Facebook or on YouTube. We're going to tally all those up. We'll find out who has to do a quote-unquote punishment next week on air or on recording for you guys. So we're lucky enough that the social media distancing question is sometimes about The Last Dance. So that transitions us very well into our breakdown of this week's 2 episodes of The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary of the 98 Bulls, the namesake of that team. Phil Jackson had that nice laminated booklet called The Last Dance for them. So it's what the last 2 episodes are really thought-provoking, guys. But we don't have time to break down everything because we could talk for hours about that. But our first question is going to be, what role does Michael play? What role does Michael going to play baseball have in his overall legacy? Like, if it has one. To me, I'm not sure. James, what do you think?
Well, if anything, I think it provides a way that Michael was able to get away without getting away. He was able to take his mind off being, the most important athlete in the world and the pressure that came with it. I mean, you heard him talk at the end of episode 5, I believe, where at the end of that 93 championship, he said he felt more relief than he did joy. Like, oh, finally we did it. It's over. The grit and grind of this NBA season and the pressure that it brings of being Michael Jordan is over. And I think he was ready to alleviate himself of that a little bit. He even talked again at the end of episode 6, saying, if I walked away from this game, I don't think I'd miss it. So that ended up being wrong because he came back, but he was kind of prepared and ready to step away from it a little bit. The only time he got closed doors is when he was in his hotel room. He was able to get away from that but still play sports. He's Michael Jordan. He needed a competitive drive. He needed something to stimulate that. So he was able to still do it and play a sport, honor his father at the same time while doing it, but able to get out of that crazy limelight of being Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls. And I think that time away, that breath of fresh air, did amazing for him because, when he came back and got in shape, he had the best season in NBA history. It was a part of one of the best seasons in NBA history. So I think that did a lot for him mentally, a lot for his mental health. He said it for the first time ever. He wasn't relied upon to be, the superhero or the saving grace. He was just one of the guys. I'm just a contributing factor, a role player on this baseball team. So it was good for him. He enjoyed it.
Max, what about you?
I think a good way to describe it is that it's the plot twist in his story, right? Like, nobody really saw it coming. Like, there were a lot of elements that made sense to it, right? Like, he got the 3-peat, which he said, it was his big goal because Larry and Magic both had never done it, and they were the guys that he wanted to take the torch from, right? He got his Olympic gold medal. He didn't get that summer off. Then he has to come back, go to his 3-peat. The dad dies, the gambling accusations, the harassment by the media, right at that point he has like he's starting to have like a family and stuff, and they're getting swept up in this too. When I say family, like I mean wife and kids. He obviously has the mother and father who have been prominent throughout. So it all just got to him, and obviously people close to him didn't see it as like that huge of a surprise as the other 10 millions, hundreds of millions of people in the world that followed him did. But I think it's everything happens for a reason, right? So I think it's the start of chapter, the second chapter or the back half, whatever you want to call it. It's certainly the clear dividing point of like I think that mostly coincides with his dad dying and how his demeanor changed. But I think the move to baseball was like that confirmation of that transition. Like my dad died and it affected me in this way, and I am now this as a person as a result.
Yeah, I'm not so sure he would have. I'm not so sure that second part of the career would have been as successful or lasted as long if it didn't happen. You know what I mean? Am I off base by saying that?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that adheres to both of our points. I mean, he was able to kind of go and recharge the batteries a little bit and make the second part just as memorable, if not more memorable, than the first part. So, I think going to play baseball, it started a huge deal. It got everyone away. It also changed the public perception of him a little bit. As Michael Jordan stepped out of being in the spotlight, that pressure got taken off of him. Now we can just see him as, a fun clubhouse guy. This is, I go to see Michael Jordan kind of chase, a different passion and it not be about business when he's, on the field of play. This is actually about having fun and having a good time and just trying to better yourself as a person and as an athlete. It's not business Michael Jordan. So fans don't hold him to that anymore. I think it was so good for him to do that.
Right. And sticking with Jordan playing baseball, to me, there's only really one answer to this question, but does Michael Jordan make the major leagues if that whole the lockout in MLB doesn't happen and they try to use replacement players and whatever they were doing around that time? But does Michael Jordan make it to the majors if he keeps playing, Max?
I mean, does he make it? Maybe. Does he have an impact up there, like a significant long-term lasting impact? Probably not. He was already, he had already been a professional athlete for what, like way more than that. Like 10 years at that point, right? There's a lot of mileage on him. Like, why would somebody get?
It's baseball, completely different sport, completely different endurance, a lot less of it.
Yeah, I mean, but still, like, why give a 30-year-old guy who just spent a decade playing basketball over a chance over, one of your 22-year-old college pro? You know what I mean?
I'll tell you why. Is because we know who that athlete is. It's Michael Jordan. Yeah. Besides the revenue part of it, I actually wasn't even thinking about that, but that's a huge point. It's a business, and like if I got a chance to put ass in seats, and I'm not sure how the Chicago White Sox were as a franchise back then if they needed that. But if I got a chance to put ass in the seats, no one sells tickets better in the history of sports maybe than Michael Jordan. But two, we give him time. He only was at it for what they say, like 16 months or something like that. He was only at it for a year
and a half. Not even a full year and a half, yeah.
You give him years and years and time. Like if he actually stuck with baseball and learned how to master it and retrained his body and his focus to do it. I mean, we're not talking about one of the best basketball players of all time. We're talking about one of the best athletes of all time. And if he really rededicated himself to a different sport, Michael Jordan was going pro. His floor was, hitting near 200 in the minor leagues. And that was after picking up a bat for the first time in however long, decades and decades of playing at the semi-professional level.
That is very impressive that he hit 200.
Like, he had a 13-game hitting streak.
Yeah.
Like casual sport fans, I'm like, you see 200, you're like, oh, that stinks. For a guy to pick up a bat and go to, those are not semi-professionals. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Those are professional baseball players just at the minor league level. Those are still pros. To go in and, get a hit off someone who's been, doing baseball every day for his entire life is really, really impressive. And I think he was only going upward. If he stayed with it, I think he was going to the pros. And, like, once he gets there, who knows what his ceiling would be. Maybe all-star teams.
To me, he could have been like Deion Sanders. You know what I mean? Deion Sanders wasn't
groundbreaking.
Away good at baseball.
Like, he made all-star teams.
Deion would be hitting like 260 to 280, like a decent amount of home runs, stealing bases. Like that's a very good baseball player. That's successful. You know what I mean? You don't just come in out of nowhere and those 24-year-old kids who do this for a living, throwing you 95 miles per hour, and you just pick up a bat and come. Like, I faced a kid in high school who threw me 92 miles per hour. I still have never seen that baseball to this day. Like, I literally looked at my coach and was like, what just happened? I walked out. I almost just sat down and gave the kid the strikeout. Like, and he just picks up a bat and does it. Like, that's to me, I don't know.
It is extremely impressive.
Yeah. Moving on though, if he never came back from baseball, could the Bulls really rely on Scottie Pippen? Like, the episode, what was it, 7 last night, kind of really hit on this one. This was an emotional roller coaster because, like, for a time they could, and then that whole Scottie quitting on you thing came out. Like, James, could Scottie Pippen be the dude?
Here's why I don't think so. And it's literally no slight on the Scottie Pippen at all. For a lot of our listeners, let me preface my statements with this, because I'm not saying Scottie Pippen couldn't have been the leader of a franchise and take a team to a championship. It was clearly shown that Scottie Pippen had more than enough ability to be the number one guy in pretty much any NBA franchise, maybe regardless of Michael Jordan. But Michael Jordan, especially in his first 3 championships, had established such a culture in Chicago, and that was a hard, tough-nosed, about-business culture where if you're not performing to, a certain standard, which Michael Jordan talked about all the time, you're just going to get your ass, put in your ass until you got up to that standard. Scottie Pippen was not that guy. Scottie Pippen admitted that he was more of the, laid-back, but it's okay kind of guy. We'll pick it up and, not the forceful hand, which is not bad at all, but that's not what Chicago was used to. And that's so different. It's such a different extreme that I'm not sure it would have propelled guys like it did back in the day, and it kind of showed. And when push came to shove, Scottie made a very bad decision when a play was drawn up to Tony Kukoc that worked of choosing to not go into the game because the ball didn't go to him. Now he's thinking of, I'm the next Michael Jordan. There's never going to be an end of the game situation where the ball's not going to Michael Jordan. But Scottie was not him, and I think that's a microcosm of the whole situation. Is Scottie was not that guy, but the team still had success. So I don't think Scottie Pippen couldn't have stepped into Michael Jordan's shoes, but that's no slight on Scottie Pippen because I don't think there's anyone that could have stepped in. We're talking about arguably one of the greatest basketball players of all time. There's no one who could step into Michael Jordan's shoes.
Nah, Max, Jordan never comes back. Pippen, is he the dude?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear he's not. Like, he couldn't have been the dude by himself, and whether he was physically capable of doing so in terms of skill in the basketball court, probably. But honestly, I think him doing that probably – I think if Michael Jordan doesn't come back when he does, like, I think that team probably grows discontent with itself and probably implodes from the inside out. Like, it's a good thing they kept that level of success, and there wasn't really too much of a drop-off after that incident to when Jordan came back. If that happened and then – a lot of they're basically what I'm trying to get at. There's a lot of room for things to go bad and things to kind of explode and kind of burn out. And that was the end. It could have been the end of the Bulls. And I don't think that locker room could ever looked at him the same after what he did. Thankfully, Jordan coming back put him back in a position where he didn't need to be the one to do the tough things like curse everyone out or take the last shot or get on people. You know what I mean? I think Scottie doing that would have been like, hey, yeah, well, what about that one time back 3 years ago when you didn't even go on the court for Tony Kukoc's game winner? You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff that'll stick with you and makes your peers look at you different.
And notice how when Michael Jordan came back and assumed that role, everybody else just fell into place. Scottie didn't fight it. Dennis didn't fight it. Phil didn't fight it. B.J. Armstrong wasn't there. But, Steve Kerr didn't fight it. No one fought it. Like, Scottie didn't fight for that right when MJ came back. There was no animosity there. I think he was very much okay with, like, I like who I am. I like my role that I had when we were winning. I don't want to change and have to be the authoritarian. That's what Michael did. So you do it when you come back. I'm cool being who I am.
That's an interesting kind of rabbit hole to dive down another time. You know what I mean? What if Scottie Pippen was a different dude and he did take over that role? Like, what kind of – that would have been like a literal fight when MJ came back?
Yeah, they actually would have fought.
Oh, it would have been a fist fight. Yeah. So that's an interesting rabbit hole for another time, another day. But we're sticking with that kind of time period in right when Michael Jordan comes back. What stood out to you most, James, about the 95-96 Bulls team? Like, what is as much storylines as there are around about this team, what stood out to you the most?
The absolutely, unhesitant, unresistant support and, camaraderie that Michael Jordan was shown when he came back. Something that he earned with his pedigree, with winning the 3 championships prior before leaving for baseball. But everybody was ready to jump on the Michael Jordan Express, and everybody was ready to work hard. It wasn't I alluded to it in my last point, but there was no resistance. There was no fight to, no, dude, you left. This is a different team. He came back and was able to rightfully take his spot at the top and, and take his throne. And they were ready, to do whatever, especially when he came back in the playoffs. I mean, he wasn't at full, 100% basketball shape, and he admitted that, but they were still ready to go as Michael went. And, they were all prepared for him. Everybody fell in line when he came back, and you don't get 72-10 unless everyone's willing to play a part that, their leader and captain is willing to put you in. And they were every single time. And that's a great team, a great organization, but it also shows is they knew who the top dog was. And just because you went and played a year and a half of baseball doesn't mean you're not still top dog when you come back. We know who you are. And there was no fight for that. Honestly, that was the biggest thing that stuck out to me, because I'm thinking about it today. I'm not sure if there's a team or a person that can step away for, quote unquote selfish reasons, as not a bad selfish reason, but him going to play baseball was a me decision, not thinking anybody else. I'm not sure if anybody else could come back. The closest thing I could think about it is if Kevin Durant abandoned the Thunder like that and came back to the Thunder, would Russell Westbrook fall in line like that? Would everyone be willing to just welcome him back? We get a completely different story. So that really stuck out to me.
Fist fight. Max, 95-96 Bulls. What sticks out to you?
Honestly, man, their defense was insane. It literally seemed like teams just couldn't pass against them. Obviously, you watch highlights, you're never going to see when they gamble and miss, but it just seemed like they just knew what the other team was doing every single game before they were. They were in every single passing lane. Their guards would get blocks down low. Their guards were good rebounders. Their big guys had quick hands. They could get steals. All of them could pass for the most part. It was kind of like watching, a more modern game in a way, obviously without all of the pace, but in terms of, the ball movement and the way they played the open floor, which is, I guess, maybe really the what I'm trying to say, the way that they ran the open floor in general, especially after getting some kind of defensive steal. They're always on the same page with each other. Someone could see Rodman getting a steal 2 steps before he had the ball in his hand, and they're already at the other 3-point line by the time he has the ball and he's ready to pass it, and it's a wide open dunk. That's just kind of what stood out to me, is how cohesive they were as a unit, especially defensively.
Yeah, it's quite a trip to actually see those highlights. This next question is one I'm actually really excited to hear you guys answer. One of the series that they showed in that was the 96 series against Supersonics and Gary Payton, the glove. And Jordan said he had no problem with Gary Payton. And that's, to me, I think that might be a little bit shaky, baby. But it's
baby.
I don't know about that.
You don't really
9 for 21 or something like that. 9 for 21 in game 3.
Yeah,
so they also highlighted that Gary Payton didn't start the series on Michael Jordan, which to me, I don't get it. I'll never understand why Payton didn't start that series on him. But our question I'm going to pose to you guys, Max, I'll send it to you first, is does the outcome change if Payton starts that series on Michael Jordan? Do the Bulls not win that series if Gary Payton guards Michael Jordan the entire time?
I think they still do, but I think that would have gone 7 games. I think what would have happened is more than likely they would have ended up splitting the first 2 games in Chicago, because clearly Jordan had some issues with Payton, playing him, strict man coverage all game. I do think that given how great of a team that they were and how great of a coach Phil Jackson was, that if that happened earlier, he would have adjusted to it the same, and it would have happened earlier in the series than when it did. So ultimately, I think that the Bulls were probably still the better team, but that series definitely should. I remember them saying that going into it, it was seen as one of the most lopsided finals in history. And which made no sense because the Sonics were like one of the top 2 seeds in the West, and
they were first in the West all season. First in the West.
They were first in the West all season. I was like, look, like, yeah, they might not have gone 72-10 like the Bulls team did, but that's still clearly a very great team over there. Like I mean, I guess because Jordan's piloting it, but like, how could you possibly compare the quality of teams in that series to like the 07 Cavs Spurs? Like that Cavs team was like awful. Like that they would probably get bumped in the first round if they were in the East right now. Like that's how bad they were. Like it's crazy to me. So I would say it would be the Bulls in 7 because they were the Bulls, man. That was the 96 Bulls. They are, were still considered by many the greatest team ever. And I just think that their combination of chemistry together, cohesion, their experience, their defensive intensity, like I think that would have prevailed for them ultimately, especially because they would have had Game 7 at home as well.
Yeah.
So that's just my opinion.
You said it, Max. Like they were the 96 Bulls. Like that's who they were.
Like how else do you put it?
And that's why I don't think the outcome changes that much. I mean, first of all, you have to think the Sonics had one best card to play. And their best card to play was putting Gary Payton on Michael Jordan. And they purposely saved it to last because like that's the best thing that we got. This is our Hail Mary play. If they show that hand from Game 1, they might get Michael Jordan for the first game, maybe the second game, most likely just the first half of the second game before he turns it on again. That personal vendetta against Gary Payton starts on Game 1. And what happened every single time Michael Jordan had a personal vendetta against somebody?
That's very true. It did not go well.
So if he upsets Michael Jordan in Game 1, it's probably 4 games of 50 points after that, all aimed at Gary Payton. Like, I don't know if the outcome changes that much. You might get the Bulls to stumble back if you hit, Gary Payton on Michael Jordan in Game 1. But then after that stumble, the heel's going on the campus, and then a barrage is coming that you just cannot defend. And, the Sonics might have gotten themselves an extra win by saving Gary Payton until, putting him on Michael Jordan until Game 3 or 4. You do it in Game 1, you might get a win Game 1 in Chicago, and then you get 4 losses after that, and the series is over in 5.
I like that. I like that point. Kind of brings one of the favorite moments of that of these couple episodes were just the time they spent on LeBradford Smith.
LeBradford Smith.
He gave him 37 in a game, and Jordan goes out and gives him 36 and a half. Like that, and man.
The kid didn't deserve it. The kid didn't deserve it.
Like he really didn't like that. Can you imagine that? Like
he literally made up a story about the guy to get himself fired up.
Like he needs no excuse to have a vendetta against him. It's unreal. So that's gonna wrap up.
Before we move on, I gotta say, George Karl, what a terrible idea.
Yeah. Just
shoulder Michael Jordan. Like, hello, this guy he made his reputation on finding a way to motivate himself from nothing. Like, I got to say this, like, I get the NBA was a bunch of tough guys back then, but, like, why didn't someone realize, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't always try to be tougher than Jordan because that just fuels him and that makes him tougher than me. Why don't I try to be more neutral? Like, why don't I try to, like, stop treating him? Like Gary Payton's the only guy who ever got under his skin successfully. Think about how low of a success rate that is, right? Like, how many other guys tried to mouth off to Jordan between 84 and 98, and only one guy ever really did it successfully, Gary Payton, and that didn't even happen until 96. So, like, I find it hard to see, A, how George Karl wouldn't be like, hey, Michael, at least, hey, Michael, like, good luck, something. Just acknowledge the guy, or B, how no one thought to be, different in terms of how they approach him and their demeanor and treating him.
And then you got B.J. Armstrong on the Hornets. Literally played with the dude, like practiced with him, lived with him, like was everything. And you just go ahead and do what sets him off. Like
it's just like I get you to do things in the heat of competition, but like someone like that's got to be like that wouldn't happen in today's game because there are team meetings about that now. And in 2020. Phil Jackson or George Karl is saying, hey, whatever you guys do, nobody says a word to Michael except Gary Payton because he's the only one that it bugs.
That's what I would be doing. Don't talk to him. Don't look at him.
Don't look at him. Avoid eye contact.
Yeah. Like you're not what I would tell
like you're an unwanted guest in his house.
What I would tell people is as much as you want to be, unless your name is Gary Payton or Sean Kemp, if I'm George Karl, you're not going to be the one to break Michael Jordan. You're not going to be it. So don't try to be tough guy. Don't try to look him in his eye to try to push him. It's not going to be you. you might get them tonight, but the next game or the next series or the next play, you're going to very much regret it. So it's just stop. Just stop trying. We'll beat him as a unit.
Yes.
You are not going to be the single guy to get on Michael Jordan's skin. No one's done it before. Why do you think it's going to be you, B.J. Armstrong? Like, why?
It's just so funny how everyone was like, I'm going to be the guy that dethrones Michael Jordan.
Now,
I'm going to be the guy that dethrones Michael Jordan.
Reggie Miller said it. Reggie Miller has the right to say that. Reggie Miller is the best player on a finals team. He can be the one to say that. You know what I mean? You know,
yeah.
It's also got to be a pretty dangerous
Bradford Smith is not going to be the guy to break Michael Jordan. It's just not going to happen.
I know, like, it didn't work out the way Reggie wanted it to and everything, but, like, can you imagine, like, that feeling in the moment of, like, saying to yourself, like, I'm going to be the one to retire Michael Jordan? Like, how
retire Michael Jordan.
That was such a sick ending to that episode, I got to say.
I'm going to be the one to retire Michael Jordan.
How do you, like, can you imagine, like, how you feel as a person, like, when you're saying that? Like,
he played like it, too. He gave it his best effort.
I kind of put that on the par as, like, Baker Mayfield. Like, I've never woken up in the morning and looked in the mirror and said to myself, I feel dangerous.
I feel dangerous.
You know what I mean? Like, I've never felt that about myself. Like that kind of, like that.
Yeah, that's wild to have that kind of swagger.
Right. I'm jealous, man. You know what I mean? Like, those are the two things that I kind of, like, aspire to be like. But that's a good breakdown of Last Dance, episode 7 and 8. So it's the last 2 episodes this upcoming Sunday, right?
Sunday, 9 and 10.
It's actually about how the 97-98 season ends.
Yeah. Episodes 9 and 10, The Last Dance, Sunday night comes on, premieres at 9 p.m. Don't miss it. And if you do miss it, catch us next Monday or Tuesday, depending on when we do this, to hear our breakdown of episodes 9 and 10. So, guys, to wrap it up, tap outs, who wants to go first?
I can go first. I got something.
Do it, Max.
So I got to say, as I've mentioned before, I am a soccer guy through and through. I've kind of touched on it earlier. The German Bundesliga is coming back this weekend. I'm not someone who is an avid week-by-week follower of the Bundesliga, but I'll be damned if it doesn't feel good knowing that I'm going to have something to do while I drink beer all day on Saturday, watch soccer starting early. It's going to be great having sports back in some capacity. Not the best birthday present I could have ever asked for, but certainly a nice consolation prize at the last minute. It could be a lot worse, and hopefully, by this time next month, hopefully it's by far not the only league up and running. So I will say this: the light at the end of the tunnel that we have been looking down for 2 months is here. Everybody, stay strong. It's officially back on Saturday, and at that point, the wheels are turning, and it will hit your favorite league station soon.
But still stay inside. Still stay safe. Wait, Max, it's your birthday this weekend?
On Friday, yes, sir.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
You turning 22? You don't look a day older than 21, huh?
I graduated high school online this year, virtually.
James, what you got for your tap?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much our fans pay attention to my background, but it looks different. It's because I moved this past weekend to University City in Philadelphia, so I'm down with you guys. I mentioned it at the top of the episode, but I'm gonna say it again because I'm really excited. It was a big step. So I'm officially in the city of brotherly love, and it's good to be here, man. I love it.
Love it.
Yes, once all this is over, we're gonna hit the town.
Lighting right now at my desk. I mean, you see me fumbling with it. It's not the best right now, so lighting is still in the works.
Hey, whenever the bars open up, you can catch the all 3 of the Trust the Process team out on the town. You might want to keep a safe distance because it's not going to go well. Because we all know how that's going to be.
Yes, sir.
For me, let's see. I guess the best thing I got was yesterday. The state governments officially allowed the people who filed for unemployment under 1099 contractors or self-employed. Sunday, Mother's Day, was the first day that you could file a biweekly claim. So if you fall under that designation, you can go on the portal, check out how much you will be making, and then file your biweekly claim. If that helps anybody out, that's the best thing I'm trying to do. If you fall under that designation for 1099 contractors or self-employed, go check it out. Go to your state government website and make that file. You know what I mean? Because we all need that help right now. If you're not working, I hope that helps at least someone. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But Yeah, guys, that wraps us up for this week. So check us out next week on Trust the Process, recorded on brought to you by My New Philly, where something's always new and everything's always Philly.
Always Philly.
Keep it easy.
Let's
Philly.
go. Sports is back this weekend.